Hello YouTube, I am the Tanis Likens, and this is Sir Cocoa Puff. Yeah, we're taking a morning ride to go get some breakfast. It's finally warm enough I can take my boy with me. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, first and foremost, I want to, declare something. I'm going to start, anytime I do these little videos, I'm going to try and put, a title on it, and I'm thinking, car talk, because we're usually in the car. So, yeah, I may end up doing that, but what are we here for? What are we talking about today? There's something that I feel like is a common misconception that I want to talk about considering AiRcRaFt engines. Now, for those that don't know, I was an aircraft mechanic on engines for 4 years in the military, Air Force to be specific. So, yeah. But what I want to talk about is, they don't work like cars in regard to how fast an engine runs. So we got to cover a few things, like how does it work, and what does it actually mean. So first and foremost, a car, as you press on the gas, like I'm doing right now, it accelerates and the RPMs go up. That doesn't work the way it does with an aircraft. So an aircraft, once it gets up to speed, it's always at 100% RPM, regardless of what type of aircraft engine it is, unless we're talking about little small personal vehicles, which I don't know anything about those. All I know is bigger aircraft, so we're gonna stick with that. Sorry, I don't know anything about the little bitty aircrafts that have a single prop on it. I just don't know how those work, other than they fly exactly the same. The mechanics for flight is the exact same. Anyway, so it's at 100% the entire time. So what is actually propelling it forward? And that is the thrust being generated from the engine. And effectively, there are two types of engines, even though, you look it up and there's several. And it is going to be basically one that has a jet thrust. We'll just keep it simple and call it jet thrust, or it's got a propeller. Now, there are different types of jet thrusts, but the where the thrust comes is slightly different, and we'll describe that in a minute. So first off, how does it get to 100%? If it's got to spin up, and you're saying that it always runs, doesn't that mean it's got to get there first? Yes. So there is an air starter. Unlike a car, it does not have an electrical starter. It has an air starter, which basically pushes air into the engine. And two things are happening all at once. And in a way, a aircraft engine is kind of a self-propelling or self-sustaining engine. So it's kind of like perpetual motion, only it's not actually perpetual motion. It's got to have two different inputs in order to self-sustain, and that the first one is obvious: fuel. You got to have gasoline, or JP8 more correctly, which is kind of like a combination of gas and kerosene, I believe. I don't know enough about that. I'm not a chemist or anything, so just know that jet fuel is not car fuel. You're not going to put that shit in your car and it's going to work. Just not going to happen. The second input is air. If an aircraft engine does not have enough air, it is going to cause it to stall out, and basically it's not going to be producing any thrust at all. So when the air starter forces air in there, it's going to start spinning the compressor. And remember that this is all one shaft, and all the compressor's job is to compress the air down. Imagine you've got a piece of cake and you're compressing it and you're making it denser and denser and denser until you can't compress it any further. That is effectively what the compressor of the aircraft engine is doing. Then it goes into the burner section, which is where the fuel is, where the flame is, and it ignites the fuel and, does that. The final section is the turbine, which is in the back. And depending on what type of aircraft it is, turbines usually have 3 stages. The compressor just depends on the engine, so I'm not going to go into that. I know on C-130 has 13 stages of compression. The rest of them I'm not too sure. And then there's a slight difference with the turbo fan, because with jets, the turbine is where most of the thrust is going to come from. However, a turbo fan is actually coming from the fan portion. Like 90% of the thrust is coming from the fan portion of it, and it does essentially the same thing, where it's compressing some of the air and then forcing it back behind it. Despite what some famous goofballs have said, an aircraft engine is not sucking its way through the air. I'm sorry, but there's just not enough suction to even move it. The actual push of the aircraft is coming from the thrust. Like, you couldn't increase the sucking of air enough to actually move the aircraft. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, let's move on from there. So the difference here is that a turbo fan, a jet engine, and a propeller, the thrust is actually coming from different places. Like I just said, for the turbo fan, it's actually coming from the fan. About 90% of the thrust is coming from the fan itself. And, well, let's just continue on with the different places. Jet engines, it's coming from the turbine. Like 100% of it coming out the turbine. Maybe not exactly 100, but you get the idea. It's coming from the turbine itself. It's pushing back. The thrust from any type of propeller aircraft is actually coming from the propeller. It's not coming from the engine at all, technically. It is coming 100% from the propeller. And the way that you adjust your speed or how much thrust is going out depends on which type we're dealing with. For the jet and the turbofan, it is basically the same thing. You have a section around the engine that will also like open up wider or close tighter. So when it's open up wide, you actually are producing less thrust. When it's closed tight, you're producing more thrust. For the prop, it depends on the position of the propellers. And when it's at feather, you're not producing any thrust at all. And I can't really do this with my puppy in my hand, but just take your hand and point it at me, like, what are you doing, feller? Like, hold it like this. Here, we're at a stop. So this would be feather, and anything like that way would be you producing power, producing thrust. So that also determines like how fast you're able to move. But thrust and like speed is kind of two separate things, if that makes any sense. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, so that's where your thrust is actually coming from. So what does this all mean? What does this got to do with anything? Well, so a lot of people, I've realized, don't understand that an aircraft engine is always at 100% RpM. But what this also means is it has to have air coming in. It also has to have fuel, but we're not talking about fuel right now because fuel is a whole different system and it's gravity fed. You're not very likely to have a fuel issue. Having an air issue, though, is a problem, because if you don't have enough air coming in, it's going to end up stalling out the engine, and the engine's just going to die and not run. And the reason I'm talking about this is we were watching some show about disasters in aviation, and they were talking about how an aircraft stalled. Just trying to explain what a stall is versus it not having any lift. They're two separate things. I don't know why somebody would get that confused. Like, if the aircraft is stalled, if the engine is stalled, it means it's not getting enough airflow or something has happened to that engine. Not having enough lift is completely different. Just because you're engines have died doesn't mean you're going to fall out of the sky like a stone. You are going to fall, but you are going to have at least a little bit of control. A little bit, depending on what's going on. There's some major issues going on there, but it depends. Like, depending on the aircraft and how heavy it is and what its load is, there are conditions that, yes, it would fall out of the sky. Yes, I do get that, but just because the engine's stalled doesn't mean it's going to happen like that. No, that if something like that happens, it's probably pilot error. But yeah, I just wanted to share with you guys that yes, an aircraft engine runs at 100% RpM. It does not run like a car where right now I'm only doing like 2,000 RPMs and I could rev it up to 3,000 or something like that. Doesn't work like that. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed like this little lesson, even though, you know, I was doing a lot of ums and having to think for a second. But this is unplanned, unscripted, and it's knowledge that I haven't used in almost 10 years. It's been 13 years since I got out of the military. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you later. Bye.